Welcome to the Retired Mountie Masterclass on private vehicle purchase protection. I can promise you, if you're a first-time buyer or even a seasoned buyer, you're about to learn something that you didn't know about. A lot of my videos have absolutely nothing to do with being a police officer. I just show you guys what I do now. Except I have a whole lot of expertise going back a total of 16 years over a policing career that I finished last year. One of these particular issues is private vehicle purchase protection. Now, this is hopefully the start of a series of a whole bunch of master classes to help you get more information on how to protect yourself, which is not commonly available. I've searched all over the web, couldn't find anything in Canada to guide people on what to do before they buy a privately sold used car. You can seek legal advice, you can do all these different things. Typically they cost money, but that information is not normally and readily available, especially when I went and looked for it. So I'm going to share it with you and possibly save you thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars on your next vehicle purchase. What does it mean when I say private vehicle purchase protection? It's knowledge. It's a series of things that you can do right now as a private citizen to ensure that you are not being had in a sale. What happens is whenever people make a purchase that they find out later on is not what they expected, they end up calling police and they're disappointed. Because whenever the police respond to that, well, that's an agreement between person A and person B, which means we are limited in what we can do because that is a civil agreement and sale. It means that you have to sue them in order to get any remedy for anything you do. Now, the police don't provide any remedies in Canada for financial losses. Civil court is always the one to do that, or the Supreme, which is the Supreme Court in most cases for major cases like this. However, if you show up after the fact, that really doesn't help you, does it? And what I've come across is there is no information available to the general public about what you can do in order to prevent this from happening in the first place. So there is a point in time when it does become a crime, and we will talk about that in step 3. The first step is going to be going online, bringing up your search bar, and I want you to type in CPIC VIN check online. CPIC space VIN space CHECK and search. Where it's going to take you to is the federal government website for CPIC. It's a user interface portal for public use where you can then go through and search it up. Here's a quick video on what that looks like. Government of Canada website for CPIC, CPIC-CIPC.ca. I'll include a link in the description below for you to refer to this in future. As you can see here, you can search vehicles. You may search for autos, trucks, vans, SUVs, motorcycles, snowmobiles, anything with a vehicle serial number on it. You enter that serial number into the vehicle identification number, VIN, and you have to agree to the terms. And it even gives you a little warning down here. If you receive a positive result, please contact your local police to confirm the information and ask for assistance. You hit submit and wait for your results. Folks, it's just that easy. It's free, and you don't have to pay the police to come look at it. You can do it yourself from the site in which you're visiting on your phone through the app. Fantastic. Nobody, and I repeat, nobody knows this. That's one of the tools that's free, by the way, to anybody in Canada to check whether or not the serial number of a car is actually registered or reported to have issues or flagged by the Centralized Police Information Center. So CPIC is an invaluable resource, and it should be your first step in your tool bag to combat being taken advantage of. You want to make sure that it's not stolen. Now, the next step is lien check. And typically when you get to this point, you're talking about major companies and corporations like Carfax. You don't have to use those companies and corporations. If you're in the market for a privately sold used vehicle, you're typically not in that higher bracket where you're determined to buy that one car. meaning that if you want to go to these larger agencies that provide all these remedies that you just found are free in the first place, you end up having to pay $60, $70, $80 per vehicle check in order to check them. What if you want to try out 10 or 15 vehicles and try and buy those? There's a cheaper way to do it, and they do offer discounts, but for the average person, it's not reasonable. So I'm going to provide you with a website that you can go to that in various provinces will check for liens, and the highest cost in these provinces is $10. So in one website with one app, you can do 8 different vehicles for the cost of a larger company for one. And this is what it looks like. Here we are at the pprs.acol.ca I'll include the link in the description below so you guys can have easy access to this and save it to your favorites. Now, this is a lien check service. We're going to get into what it's actually for and what it means, but it's just that simple. The website, you enter the same serial number you just put in for CPIC, and then you select the province and territory in which you're in. And here I'm in Nova Scotia, so I'm going to pay $8.75 plus tax. The most, as you can see, is $10, depending on the province or territory you're in. Guys, this is a really easy, great tool to access to protect yourself from liens on vehicles. If you can't justify paying $10 against a $1,000 vehicle you may buy, you may want to reevaluate your risk assessment on what you're purchasing. All right, so now we're past CPIC. We've checked to make sure our vehicle's not stolen. We have that app with us because when we go to look at vehicles, we can punch it in when we're there and we can check it real time. We also checked lien. What's important to know about liens down the road is that the lien period is typically prominent for 2 different types of vehicles. Vehicles that have been highly modified or had an extremely high amount of work done to them, or new vehicles. Almost every single new vehicle has a lien put against it in order for it to be sold. That is a way for the bank to verify that they get paid in the event that the ownership gets changed to a new person before the loan's paid off. Now, how long do you have to worry about that? As it stands right now, the longest amortization period, the longest period in which you can take a loan out, I believe is with a major motor company such as Dodge. It's 8 years. That's a mortgage in terms of some of the smaller financiers, and 8 years is a long period. So you really have 8 years of concern where there may be a registered lien against a once new vehicle. An 8-year-old vehicle isn't exactly new, but you have to be aware that when you do pick up those vehicles, they may have a lien in it. So spending the $10 to check to see if there's a lien registered against that vehicle will save it from being recovered against you when you try to register it, because you will not be able to register it if there's a lien against it. That has to be a satisfied debt with the province before you get title and ownership in your name. There's also the option where you have the antique cars, highly modified cars, cars with vehicles with a whole bunch of work done to them, and there could be a mechanic lien on them. Now, the mechanic lien is a different process where mechanics have the right to make titled access to finances owed against the vehicle, and they have to prove that to the court before they get the lien. However, if there's a mechanic lien on that vehicle, you want to know about it because, again, you could suffer a cost recovery in the future where they're entitled to take the car and sell it for what they're owed, and then you're just given the rest. In the case of older vehicles and even newer vehicles, you may spend less for it, but when they sell it, you will get less back than they spent for it because their primary objective in lien recovery is only to recover as much as the asset is worth to the lien. So, and if they don't get that amount of money, you don't get anything at all, and you lose 100% of your money, and you're stuck suing that person in civil court, like I said before, because it's a one-on-one dispute for all of your monies back. If they didn't have the money to pay the lien, they likely don't have the money to pay you. So it's very important that you spend the $10 to check to see if there's liens on these vehicles. And it's really hard not to justify, especially when you've just seen where to do it. Even if you're buying a car for $1,000, it's pretty important that you do a lien check for $10. Now, this is where things get a little bit more complicated. This is where the police typically get involved, and you've already crossed the threshold, so I'm going to tell you in advance. And this is where the information is lacking in a lot of different places. I guarantee you the first two things I told you, no one else has told you. However, the third thing is verifying the paperwork. You need to verify that the person who is physically selling you the vehicle is the same person that is on the paperwork itself. And if you flip over the sheet of paper, I've been in British Columbia, Ontario, and all through the Maritimes buying vehicles. If you flip over these sheets of paper, typically on the back there's a buyer and seller's portion. Make sure those are filled out completely before you go. And that is your excuse to check their identity. You can ask for their ID and you can fill in their driver's license number, who they are, at that time. Now this is where the crime comes in, because whenever you walk away without all that being filled in, say, well, I'm going to be smart and fill it in later on my own, that is when you get caught in a fraud. This person who you've met with, you don't know who they are for sure, signs the name of someone else who didn't agree to sell it in the first place, and you're caught holding a vehicle that's now reported stolen as a fraudulent document was passed to you. And that is the offense. Someone has uttered a forged document to you, and they've forged the signature of someone else in order for them to benefit financially. This also becomes a theft because there's a color of right aspect to things once ever the fraud, but the fraud has to take place first. So if you have run into that issue, and in the simplest terms possible, if someone has financially benefited from the forgery, which is a component of forging the document, they've also converted the vehicle, which is not the paper, just the paper, it's the vehicle itself. They've also stolen, not from you, but from the owner of the car, and they've converted that. So you may not get them charged with theft, but you have every right to have them charged with uttering a forged document. And don't forget it, because that was the specific crime committed against you. It's important that if you do run into this issue down the road, or if you have in the past and you haven't had this explained to you, that you understand that, because when it comes down to telling the police what you want to have happen, they often get confused. Not all police officers are equal, and I can promise you fraud is a very weak point in most police officers' vocabulary. So when you tell them specifically what I've just taught you, and you watch this video again and again and again, when you run into this issue, you go to them and you tell them that a fraud has been perpetrated against you because the person forged the signature of someone else, and you want to investigate it. What they do with it is of no relevance. It's at that point in time that you're in cost recovery and you're back to square one, going to civil court. Turns out that you can't win civil court without proving that they actually did that in the first place, and the agreement is, even circumstantially, you still have to prove that they're the ones that did it. So if the police are in place to help you do that, their actions will support your civil case down the road, which is how most civil cases are played out. And I've been through this with a family member of mine, which is pretty important. So if you have someone with you, have them also verify yourself that the vehicle identification number, which is a serial number that you find on the windshield or on the B-pillar or by the door on the driver's side, it matches the paperwork itself. And look at it closely. Make sure that it is not been modified, changed, there's nothing moved, rearranged, or replaced. Even though it's hard to do, it's not possible to do, and it doesn't mean that the person who's in front of you is the one who did it. It means that maybe they received it, had an issue, and are passing their problems on to you. Verify that. There's also, if you jump online, you can, in the space that you're at during the meet and greet, during the test drive, have a buddy look up where the VIN numbers are on this year, make, and model of the car. You might find them under the hood. They may be under the floor mat, under a plastic plate, such as Nissan's, and they may be at various different places in the frame and the cabin. If you're not satisfied at any point that this is an actual car, I recommend walking away. If there's a discrepancy there, walk away from it. And depending on how serious and how confident you are, it may be worth reporting to police at that time, because your personal information may stop someone who is scamming everyone, including the public itself, in selling and buying and selling cars. Now, test drives. This is a personal recommendation from people who have come to me as when I was policing. Whenever you show up to test drive a car, make sure that it's cold. The exhaust should be cold. That vehicle should not have been run before you get there, and that should be communicated to the seller before you get there. The reason for that is that a lot of the issues that come up mechanically in vehicles are first heard, not seen, and they are heard when the engine is cold. Now, if for some reason you run into a very common excuse, the battery was dead, all that different stuff, you're kind of stuck. However, you have the opportunity to test drive it warm, walk away, come back in a few hours, and then start it cold to see if anything arises. If you can't take it to a mechanic, and most people don't do this because of the hassle of booking, they don't have relationships with mechanics, the cost. If you're to this point right now where you're thinking that you should take it to a mechanic, that's worthy doing. I would recommend you do that. If you can't do that, then you can have a friend or someone with you that is mechanically inclined. And ask for honest advice. You may love this car wholeheartedly, but unless you have a few extra thousand sitting around for the next morning's cold start to fix problems that you weren't aware of because you were just so enamored with the car itself, it's one of the things I would recommend have a second person to provide a separate opinion for this particular issue. Guys, you've just learned how to protect yourself in a private vehicle purchase. This is nowhere on the internet. This is nowhere to be found. You'd have to seek legal advice, and no one is sharing this. I would recommend that you do this wholeheartedly. I'm going to talk about just for a second about used car dealers and stuff like that. I've helped many people privately make purchases through dealerships. Dealerships are always a haggle. They're your business. They're going to trying to make money. But there's one thing that always was a pet peeve of mine. If you are a person who owns a vehicle, who has a plate, and depending on the province you're in, if you're going to go in and trade your vehicle in, there is no reason for you to pay them $700 to switch over the licensing. You can do that for free on your own. Just have your plate with you and have them put your plate on it and go to the Department of Motor Vehicles. There's no reason to pay $300 to buy a new plate. There's no reason to pay for all that if you already have one. That is such a common moneymaker. That's where they make bank on frequent purchases. If you're trading in a vehicle and you're going to get the tax credit for the trade-in against another vehicle, that's right, tax credit. You don't get taxed on the money that they give you for your trade-in. That's a one-to-one trade. You get taxed on what you couldn't, the value over it. Make sure they don't take you to the bank when it comes to the licensing, because that plate, typically in most provinces, is owned by you, unless you're New Brunswick. That plate belongs with you. They don't get to keep it. They have to give it back to you anyway. You might as well re-register it. In the case of Nova Scotia, you have up to 30 days or 30 days to switch the plate over itself, provided you have a bill of sale showing the date in which you purchased the vehicle. Guys, hopefully that helps you. Masterclass, C-Pick, it's free. A lien check is $10. You could do 8 cars for the cost of 1 Carfax and verify the owner is the actual person selling it by doing the paperwork on the back side of the ownership, and verify that the paperwork, vehicle serial number, actually matches the vehicle you're buying, and go through that process. Take your time, test drive your vehicle, walk away if you're suspicious, and don't forget, cash is king, and haggle, haggle, haggle. Because when you hold the bills up, they're going to let you walk out of their driveway with all that money when you could have got a better deal in the first place. And here's a handy tip. If you end up getting extra things with that vehicle, such as winter tires or summer tires, depending on what's mounted in the car, they are not to be included in the purchase price. You didn't buy that vehicle with those extra accessories mounted. You don't even actually know that they actually fit. So if your purchase price includes $1,000 worth of tires, I would take that off the total of the purchase, because you would have had to buy them anyway, separately, privately, and you would have never got taxed for it in the first place. Handy tip when dealing with accessories in private vehicle purchases and how to justify what's going on. Come to your agreements, haggle away, and enjoy. Hopefully this has helped you. I know that you've learned something. Share, like, subscribe, comment with your questions. We can get into a whole bunch of different things in the future. This is where my expertise lies. My channel has been great. I love sharing what I do, but I would really love to help a lot of people. And if you guys comment and ask me questions in the bottom of this video, I will make future videos in order to address them, and you'll get the real benefit of 16 years of expertise in all these different avenues in which I've been a police officer.